No, this one's going to linger. Get comfortable. Let the cold fade away. Slow down. Breathe it in. And when you're ready, baby, dream of a new life.
Cabin Life, Borrowed Heat by Catherine Serafina. Chapter 8, What If You Don't Come Back? Part 2. I woke before dawn to the quiet. Not the good kind. Not the settled, breathing quiet of the cabin at night, but the thin, alert stillness that made every sound feel louder than it should have been. The fire had burned down to coals, the air cold enough that I stayed wrapped in the blankets for a moment longer, listening. Nothing inside. No boots, no voices, just the wind pushing softly against the walls. I rolled onto my side and immediately felt it. The unfamiliar pull of my body against itself. My hips pressed differently into the mattress now, my waist curving inward in a way that made it harder to find the same flat, neutral position I used to sleep in. Even half awake, I adjusted without thinking. One knee drawing up, instinctively finding a balance that felt more right. I exhaled and pushed myself upright. The cabin was dim and blue with early light when I stepped out into the main room. Shane and Davis's door was still shut. Quiet, unmistakably asleep. I pulled on leggings and a sweater, the fabric settling snugly in places it hadn't a week ago, and moved quietly toward the stove. Breakfast helped. Routine helped. I had just set the pan on to warm when I heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Close. Too close. Not the familiar cadence of Shane or Davis. Heavier, slower, wrong somehow. My stomach dropped hard enough that my hand went automatically to the counter, fingers curling around the edge. Another step, snow crunching, then the softer thud of boots on wood. The deck. A shadow crossed the window. My heart slammed once, sharp and loud in my ears. "Shane?" I called, already knowing it wasn't him. Silence answered. Then carefully, a knock. Just one. I didn't move. A moment later, a voice followed. Low, calm, deliberately unthreatening. "Hey, I don't want to scare you. Shane and Davis here?" I swallowed, pulse racing, and moved to the window instead of the door, keeping my steps quiet as I pushed the curtain aside just enough to see. A man stood on the porch, hands visible, pack slung low on his back. Older than us. Not by much. With the weathered look of someone who'd learned to move carefully and live with less. When he noticed the curtain shift, he stepped back immediately, giving the glass a wider berth. "Sorry," he said. "I should have announced myself better. I'm Kyle." The name clicked into place a half second later. Relief hit me so fast my knees went weak. "Kyle," I repeated, more to myself than him. "Yeah," he said, nodding. "We were supposed to meet up early. Thought I'd stop here instead of waiting out on the trail." "Figured it made more sense," he added. "We're burning daylight as it is, and the weather window's narrow." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, then crossed back to the door and opened it fully. "They're here," I said. "Still asleep. You just startled me." "Understandable," he said easily. "You did the right thing not opening the door right away." That startled a small laugh out of me. Tight, but real. I stepped aside. "Come in. It's warm." He hesitated only long enough to wipe his boots, then stepped inside, glancing around with open curiosity but no judgment. The cabin seemed to absorb him easily, like it had already decided he belonged here, at least for now. "I'm Lainey," I added. "Nice to finally put a face to the name," he said, offering a faint smile. "They talk about you." I snorted softly. "I'm sure." The pan began to sizzle behind me, pulling me back into motion. I turned toward the stove, then paused. "You hungry?" I asked. Kyle blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "I mean, yeah, if that's okay." "It is," I said, already reaching for another pan. "Might as well make extra." I shifted into the rhythm automatically. Pan, heat, timing. Already recalculating portions, distance, how much would travel well. More fuel, fewer words. Mornings like this didn't invite lingering. By the time Shane and Davis emerged a few minutes later, the smell of cooking had filled the cabin, and the tension I'd woken with had eased into something steadier, manageable. Shane stopped short when he saw Kyle. "What the hell are you doing here?" he blurted out. Surprise, not anger. Kyle grinned. "Morning to you too." Davis blinked once, then huffed a quiet laugh. "Well, that wasn't the plan." Shane's eyes went to me immediately. "You okay?" "I am now," I said, glancing back at the stove. "Sit, both of you. Food's almost ready." Shane's hand brushed my lower back as he passed. Brief, familiar, grounding. Before he moved toward the table, Davis nodded toward the stove. "You're in for it, Kyle. Lainey makes the best breakfasts. Might make your wife jealous." Kyle huffed a quiet laugh. "Honestly, Laurel's actually thrilled. Fewer meals to worry about while I'm gone." I didn't answer, but I smiled to myself as I kept cooking, the cabin filling with warmth, voices, and the quiet understanding that whatever came next, this was something worth holding on to. They didn't linger after breakfast. That was how I knew it was real. Davis rinsed his plate and set it aside without comment. Kyle checked his pack by the door, tightening a strap, shifting weight like he was already halfway outside. Shane moved through the cabin with quiet purpose, pulling gear from hooks, checking things he'd already checked once. Preparation mode. I stayed near the stove longer than I needed to, giving them space, then forced myself to move. I wrapped what food I could spare, packed it tightly, handed things over without being asked. Jerky, bread, a small tin of rendered fat, practical things, thought through things. Shane caught my wrist once as I passed him another bundle. "Hey," he said quietly. I looked up. He searched my face for a second. Not worried, not hesitant, just present. "We'll be careful," he said again. "I know," I replied, and this time, I meant it. Kyle slung his pack over his shoulder and nodded toward me. "Thanks for the food. Seriously." I gave a small smile. "Come back alive, all of you." Davis snorted softly. "Bossy." "Accurate," Shane said without looking at him. The cold hit all at once when the door opened. Sharp, clean, unforgiving. I followed them to the threshold anyway, boots stopping just short of the snow. I adjusted Shane's pack strap without thinking, fingers firm where his ribs still weren't quite right. "Don't push it," I said. "Either of you. If something feels off, you turn back." Kyle nodded first. Then, Davis. Shane lingered. Davis shifted his weight and glanced between us. "Jesus, Shane, you're really gonna leave without kissing her goodbye?" Shane blinked. Genuinely startled. "Oh, right." That made my breath hitch despite myself. He stepped back toward me, hands warm on my arms. Familiar. The kiss wasn't rushed, not dramatic, just solid and sure, like it belonged there. Like it had already happened 100 times before and would again. "Back soon," he murmured. I nodded, because if I tried to say anything else, my voice would give me away. Then they were gone. Boots crunching, shapes thinning between the trees. Kyle's taller silhouette disappearing last, a brief lift of his hand before the forest swallowed them too. The door shut. The sound echoed longer than it should have. The cabin felt wrong without them. Not empty. Worse than that. Miscalibrated. Every sound carried too far, every movement too loud. I stood where I was for a moment, listening to the quiet press in from all sides. Then I moved. Cleaning helped at first, packing away what was left, resetting the space the way I always did when something ended, and something else hadn't started yet. But my body wouldn't let me disappear into it the way it usually did. The bra was tighter today, not painful, just present. The band pressed more firmly against my ribs, the cups fuller than they'd been yesterday, holding weight that shifted when I bent or reached. I adjusted without thinking, relearning the motion even though no one was watching. When I passed the counter, I stopped. The edge sat higher against my hip than it used to. I turned slightly, testing it, stood straighter, then leaned. No, it wasn't the counter. It was me. I stared at my reflection, not searching, not panicked, just registering. The way the world met me differently now, the way I met it. A little lower, a little softer, a little more alone. By the time dusk crept in, the fire was burning steady again and the cabin had settled, not back to normal, but into something quieter. I sat at the table with my mug between my hands, the pink ceramic warm but familiar now, listening to the wind move through the trees. They weren't supposed to be back until the day after tomorrow. I repeated that to myself as night settled in, slow and complete. There was no reason to worry yet. And still, as the darkness pressed close around the cabin, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. I didn't just need them for survival anymore. I needed them to come home. Sleep was worse. When it came, it dragged me under instead of easing me down. I dreamed without pictures. Just my body, magnified. Heat pooling low, a slow, insistent throb that made it impossible to relax. My legs felt wrong when I shifted, the space between them too sensitive, too aware of itself. Every small movement sent a ripple through me, a tugging sensation that didn't belong to anything I remembered having before. I tried to roll onto my side. The feeling followed. Not sharp, not pain, just a deep, unfamiliar fullness that made my breath catch and my thighs press together instinctively like my body knew something I didn't yet have language for. When I woke, it was with a soft, broken gasp. The ache was still there, low and centered, heavier than hunger, more insistent than soreness. My skin felt too close to itself, nerves lit just beneath the surface. I shifted again, slower this time, and swallowed hard when the sensation answered back. I curled in on myself, knees drawn up, arms tight around my middle. Breathing through it was the only thing that helped. Even then, sleep didn't come easily. The next day passed slowly. I filled it the same way I always did. Tending the fire, checking stores, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning just to keep my hands busy. I went outside once, only as far as the edge of the clearing, scanning the trees longer than necessary before telling myself it was pointless. They weren't late yet. By evening, I told myself that again, out loud once. The second night was quieter than the first, too quiet. I slept in stretches, waking often, listening for sounds that never came. Day 3 started quieter than the others, not calmer, just dulled, like the edge had worn smooth from too much waiting. I was at the table with my mug, watching the pale light creep across the snow outside, when a voice cut through the stillness. Hello? I froze. It came from outside, not close to the door. Farther out, near the edge of the clearing. Hello? Anyone there? Male, young, nervous. My heart kicked up hard as I stood and moved toward the window instead of the door, fingers brushing the counter out of habit. I pushed the curtain aside just enough to see. A teenage boy stood a few yards from the porch, bundled in layers, one hand half raised like he wasn't sure whether to wave or shield his eyes. He shifted his weight, then tried again. Hey, sorry, I'm not trying to be weird. I'm looking for... He stopped, grimaced, then muttered something I couldn't hear. I cracked the window. Can I help you? His head snapped up, relief and embarrassment crashing together on his face. Yeah, sorry. I'm looking for, he winced. Kyle's friends. Shane and Davis. I'm Kyle's son. William Will. Sorry. That did it. Relief washed through me so fast my knees went weak. I know who you are, I said, opening the window a little more. You can come closer. He let out a breath, visibly relaxing, and stepped toward the porch. Sorry, he said again. Dad told me they'd probably be back tonight at the latest. I didn't want to wait around, so I figured I'd come out early and surprise him. I nodded, then crossed back to the door and opened it. They're not back yet, I said, but you're safe here. He hesitated only a second before stepping up onto the porch. Thanks. And sorry again, I forgot your name. I smiled despite myself. Lainey. Right, Lainey. He nodded, committing it to memory. Nice to finally meet you. Come on in, I said. It's warm. He wiped his boots carefully before stepping inside, glancing around the cabin with open curiosity and obvious respect. The space adjusted around him. Quieter, younger somehow. I shut the door behind us. Hungry? I asked. He blinked, surprised. Yeah, actually, if that's okay. It is, I said, already turning back toward the stove. Might as well make extra. We filled the morning with small things. I put him to work without ceremony. Splitting kindling, checking traps, helping me sort through supplies that had already been sorted twice since they left. He did everything carefully, earnestly, like he was trying to prove something without knowing exactly what. He talked while he worked, about the outposts he'd been to, the routes his dad trusted, how he'd been halfway through driver's ed when everything fell apart. I was so close, he said at one point, almost laughing at himself, like 6 weeks out. My mom already had plans for me running errands, so she didn't have to. That sounds familiar, I said. He grinned. I already had the car picked out too. Oh? I asked. Let me guess. Something impractical. He brightened immediately. Late 70s Bronco. Total rust bucket. My uncle had one sitting behind his shop. Barely ran. I was saving up to rebuild it. Of course you were, I said. Let me guess. You'd already named it. He winced. Not officially? That means yes. The brick, he admitted, because it handled like one. I laughed. You know those things drank gas like it was free? Didn't care, he said. It was mine. I figured if I fixed it myself, I'd know how to keep it running forever. That one landed. I bet your mom loved that plan, I said. She says she's thrilled I don't have a car to wreck, he replied, then quieter. But yeah, I think she misses it. We worked in companionable silence for a while after that. At some point, I realized he hadn't once looked at me oddly, hadn't hesitated over my name, hadn't questioned anything about me at all. He only knew me as Lainey, and that mattered more than I expected. By afternoon, the waiting crept back in. We tried not to talk about it, failed, then agreed to stop pretending. Will admitted he'd been checking the tree line every 10 minutes since he arrived. I admitted I'd been doing the same since dawn. We shared lunch. He insisted on helping cook. Burned the first batch slightly, apologized like he'd committed a crime. I laughed, actually laughed, and told him he was doing fine. The sound surprised both of us. As the light began to thin toward evening, he shifted in his chair, restless in a way he'd been hiding all day. If they're not back by dark, he said carefully, I can head home. I looked at him, really looked this time. The tightness around his mouth, the way his shoulders were already braced like he'd decided what he should do instead of what he wanted. No, I said. You shouldn't be out there alone at night. He let out a breath he'd clearly been holding. Honestly, he said, voice quieter now, I was kind of hoping you'd say that. I didn't want to admit it, but yeah, I don't really want to walk back by myself after dark. That's not something you need to apologize for, I said. I'm glad you stayed. He nodded, relief plain on his face. Me too. When night finally settled in, thick and heavy and windless, the absence pressed in harder than it had the night before. Still no sign of them. I grabbed extra blankets and led him down the short hallway. You can use Davis's room, I said. That's his bed. Will paused, then nodded. Okay, thanks. He hesitated in the doorway a moment longer than necessary. Lainey? Yeah. I'm really glad I came here today. I swallowed. So am I. That night, the cabin breathed around us. The fire crackled. The wind whispered. Somewhere beyond the trees, the world kept going without them. And still, they didn't come home.
I appreciate you being here. Still lost in the dream, aren't you? Don't worry, I've got plenty more where that came from. Sweet, sexy, transformative little dreams. All just a click away. And if you're craving the naughty versions, the ones too hot for YouTube, you know exactly where to find them. On my Patreon. I'll be waiting, gorgeous.